morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. We are the first presenter and we'll be discussing about the Republic Act number 6713. But before that, pwede bang sabihin niyo muna sa katabi niyo na congrats dahil hindi ka late? Sige, sabihin niyo congrats dahil hindi ka late. Let's start. Republic Act number 6713 or an act establishing a code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees to uphold the time-honored principle of public office being a public trust, granting incentives and rewards for exemplary service, enumerating prohibited acts and transactions, and providing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes. So this act is good for the people na magte-take ng license, for example, licensure examination for teachers or mga other exams. Ito din ay maganda para makapag-review para sa mga nasa public office na or the public officials and employees, because dito matatalakay kung ano yung mandates and rules and responsibilities ng isang public official and public employee. So kung may mga kamag-anak kayo, may mga kapamilya or kakilala na nasa public service, pwede nyo sa kanilang sabihin na i-review na itong RA 6713. Section 1 is the title, or this act shall be known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Katulad sa mga companies, di ba, meron din silang mga standards for their employees. Sa government naman, itong RA 6713, ito yung standards for public officials and employees na nagtatrabaho for government or for public service. For Section 2 naman, this is the Declaration of Policies. It is the policy of the state to promote the high standards of ethics in public service. Public officials and employees shall at all times be accountable to the people and shall discharge their duties with the utmost responsibility, integrity, competence, and loyalty, act with patriotism and justice, lead modest lives, and uphold public interest over personal interest. So this is the declared policies embodied in the 1987 Philippine Constitution. For the Section 3, it is the definition of terms. As used in this act, the term first is the government. It includes the national government, the local governments, and all other instrumentalities, agencies, or branches of the Republic of the Philippines, including government-owned or controlled corporation and their subsidiaries. Next is the public officials. It is the second term, which includes the electives and appointive officials and employees, permanent or temporary, whether in the career or non-career service, including military and police personnel, whether or not they receive compensation regardless of amount. The third one is gift, refer to a thing or a right to dispose of generously or any act of liberality in favor of another who accepts it, and shall include a simulated sale or an ostensibly honest disposition thereof. It shall not include an unsolicited gift of nominal or insignificant value, not given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor from a public official or employee. The fourth one is receiving any gift. Includes the act of accepting directly or indirectly a gift from a person other than a member of his family or relative as defined in the act, even on the occasion of a family celebration or national festivity like Christmas, if the value of the gift is neither nominal nor insignificant, or the gift is given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor. The fifth one is loan, covers both simple loan and commoditum, as well as guarantees, financing arrangements, or accommodations intended to ensure its approval. The sixth is the substantial stockholder, means any person who owns, directly or indirectly, shares of stock sufficient to elect a director of a corporation. This term shall also apply to the parties to a voting trust. The next one is family of public officials or employers. It only means that their spouse and unmarried children under 18 years old. Next is person, or includes the natural and juridical person unless the context indicates otherwise. Next is the conflict of interest. Arises when a public official or employee is a member of a board, an officer, or a substantial stockholder of a private corporation, or owner, or has a substantial interest in a business, and the interest of such corporation or business, or his right or duties therein, may be opposed to or affected by the faithful performance of official duty. Next is divestment, is the transfer of title or disposal of interest in property by voluntarily, completely, and actually depriving or dispossessing oneself of his right or title to it in favor of a person or persons other than his spouse and relatives as defined in this act. The last one is the relatives. Refers to any and all persons related to a public official or employee within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, including the bilas, inso, and bala.
Section 4. The norms of conduct of public officials and employees. Letter A. Every public official and employee shall observe the following as standards of personal conduct in the discharge and execution of official duties.
The first norm that we have is commitment to public interest. So public officials and employees shall always uphold the public interest over and above personal interest. So what do we mean by this? So with this law, our public officials are reminded that in the discharge and execution of their duties, it is their first notion that they should put in their mind that they are serving the public interest over their personal interest. Also, the law requires public officials and employees to perform their duties with highest degree of responsibility, accountability, and integrity in their duties. However, it is sad to know that there are still public officials that neglected to do their duties, especially the politician that we choose, since sometimes they do it for personal interest or to earn title. Kaya it is very important for us citizens to choose a right people and a deserving leader. Next is professionalism. As stated in the law, public officials and employees shall perform and discharge their duties with the highest degree of excellence, professionalism, intelligence, and skill. So in here, our employees and public officials are reminded to be professional. So as stated in the law, they must have a highest degree of excellence. They must have a skills on their profession, and they know how to respect people and have skill in proper communicating with people or to the public. And of course, they are confident and competent. The third norm is justness and sincerity. So public officials and employees shall remain true to all the people at all times. Justness requires public officials and employees to perform their duties with impartiality, fairness, and justice. So they are expected to provide equal treatment to all individuals and to avoid any acts that may appear to be biased and discriminatory. Sincerity, on the other hand, requires public officials and employees to act with honesty and integrity in the performance of their duties. They are expected to avoid any conflict of interest and to disclose any information that may affect their impartiality. The law also requires public servants to avoid any activities that may cast doubt on their honesty and integrity. Next is the political neutrality. Political neutrality requires public officials and employees to remain impartial and unbiased in their official actions and decisions. So regardless of their political beliefs, this means that they should not use their official position to advance the interests of any political party or a group. So the principle of political neutrality is important for ensuring the fairness of the government. It helps to maintain the public trust in the government and ensure that the public officials and employees serve the best interests of the people rather than the interests of any political party or a group. The next one is responsiveness to the public. So according to this law, public officials shall extend prompt, courteous, and adequate service to the public. So what do we mean by this? It refers to the willingness and the ability of the public official to respond to the needs and concerns of the people they serve. So this means that the public servant should be accessible, approachable, and willing to listen to the public and to take appropriate action in response to their needs and concerns. So in order now to be responsive to the public, public servants must be informed about the needs and concerns of the people they serve. They must equip with the necessary skills, resources, and knowledge to address those needs effectively. So this requires regular communication and engagement with the public. The next norm is nationalism and patriotism. So under 6713, our public officials and employees requires to strive to maintain a high standard of morality, and shall promote the national interest, cultivate respect and love of country, and take an active part in the attainment of its noble aspiration. So in other words, the law encourage our public officials and employees to exhibit patriotism and nationalism by upholding the highest ethical standard and promoting the interests of the Philippines, so as well as fostering a love and respect for the country. So this helps to ensure that those who serve in the government are acting in the best interest of the nation and its people. The next one is commitment to democracy. So commitment to democracy requires our public servants to respect and uphold the rule of the law, the rights of the freedom of citizens, the principle of equality and fairness. So it requires them to be accountable to the people they serve and to participate in decision-making process in an open, transparent, and participatory manner. So in a democratic society, public servants must be committed to serving the interests of people and to promote the common good. So they must also be willing to engage with citizens, listen to their concern, and work to address their needs. The next one is simple living. So, according to this law, sinasabi lang dito na our public servant is reminded to live in a modest way or simply lang. They are obliged to be not extravagant or display any form of wealth. In very simple term, just they require them to live simply.
Section 4B explain the positive measures that the Civil Service Commission shall adopt.
So, in simplest explanation about this is our Civil Service Commission has a duty to give or to raise information to our public officials and employees. They can provide workshops, seminars, providing these norms and standards about our employees and public officials. So with this, they can raise awareness.
The second one is the continuing research and experimentation on this measure. So, it is very important for our Civil Service Commission to regularly evaluate and adjust this measure. So, why it's important? Of course, for them to ensure that they are effectively promoting the desired behavior that they want for our public officials and employees.
Now, we can now proceed to Section 5, the duties of public officials and employees. The first duties is to act promptly on letters and requests. So according to the law, within 15 days of working days from receiving a response, the letter must be done. This means that the public officials and employees must be accountable and reachable to respond to the letters and requests to the public. They must respond in an efficient and effective manner without undue delay. Next is they are required to submit annual performance reports. So according to this law, 45 days of working days after New Year, every government office or companies must submit their performance report. So why do you think that public officials required or obliged to submit annual performance report? So, of course, to provide transparency and accountability to the public. Next is to measure if there is a progress or a success in their official works. It also allows for a systematic evaluation of official performance. Also, it helps to ensure that they are meeting the expectation and requirements of their position. Lastly, annual reports provide valuable feedback for the official to improve their work and to make informed decisions about future work plans. The next duties is to process documents and paper expeditiously. So a requirement for efficient processing of official paper and document must be completed for a reasonable time with not more than 3 signatures. So if authorized signature now is not available, the next in the rank official or the officer in charge is allowed to sign the paper or the document. So this is important in order to avoid delays in decision making. It ensures timely completion of the task. It ensures proper authorization, and also it maintains the productivity and effectiveness. Next duties is act immediately on public personnel transactions. So our public officials and employees must attend to anyone who wants to avail his service. So this means that they should prioritize and expedite the processing of personal transactions such as requests, applications, and transactions that require their attention and action. So this is in line with the goal of the law to promote accountability, transparency, integrity in the Philippine government and its public servants. So it ensures that the public is provided with prompt and efficient services. The last duties is make document accessible to public. So why it is important to make document accessible to public? First is for transparency. So making document accessible to the public promotes transparency and accountability in government operations and decision making. Next is citizen participation. So, access to information enables citizens to participate in the democratic process and to hold public officials accountable for their actions. Next is public trust. Next is better decision making. And lastly is it improves service delivery. Access to information can help to improve the quality and efficiency of government services. So in summary, by making document accessible to the public, RA 6713 helps to promote transparency, accountability, trust, and trust in government operation and decision making.
Section 6. System of Incentives and Rewards. A system of annual incentives and rewards is hereby established in order to motivate and inspire public servants to uphold the highest standards of ethics. For this purpose, a committee on awards to outstanding public officials and employees is hereby created, composed of the following: the Ombudsman and Chairman of the Civil Service Commission as co-chairman, the Chairman of Commission on Audit, two government employees to be appointed by the President as members. It shall be the task of this committee to conduct a periodic continuing review of the performance of public officials and employees in all the branches and agencies of government and establish a system of annual incentives and rewards to the end of that due recognition is given to public officials and employees of outstanding merit on the basis of the standards set forth in this Act. Incentives and rewards to government officials and employees of the year to be announced in public ceremonies honoring them may take the form of bonuses, citations, directorships in government-owned or controlled corporations, local and foreign scholarship grants, and paid vacations. They shall likewise be automatically promoted to the next higher position with the consummate salary suitable to their qualification. And in case po na walang bakanteng position, ay sa next na General Appropriation Acts ay dapat kasalo na ito sa budget.
Section 7 or the Prohibited Acts and Transactions. Letter A, financial and material interest. Public officials and employees shall not directly or indirectly have any financial or material interest in any transactions requiring the approval of their office. The public officials or employees may gain conflict of interest, which should be avoided as stated in Section 9 of the Republic Act 6713. So for example, an employee is managing his or her auction business while at working hours. Another one is kapag ang mga facilities and equipments na isang company is ginagamit for personal business. And when it comes to public official naman po is kapag ang mga elected officials are engaged in either private or public businesses or corporations that will affect their duty as a public servant. So for example, ang anak ng isang public official is nagpapatakbo ng isang corporation. And yung tatay niya is public official which hold a share na sa corporation nila. So nagkakaroon po syempre ng mga transactions yan. And if it requires the approval of their office, maaring sabihin ng iba na okay, kaya ganyan ang corporation nila kasi nasa gobyerno ang tatay niya. O hindi kaya madaling ma-approve ang mga requirements nila kasi nasa gobyerno ang pamilya niya. And that is not good to hear. Letter B is the outside employment and other activities related thereto. So, number 1 is to own, control, or manage or accept employment as officer. So, in simple terms, kung tayo po ay nasa gobyerno, ang primary source of income lamang po natin is nanggagaling lang po dapat sa gobyerno. Unless, stated in number 2, tayo po ay pinayagan ng ating immediate superior or let's just say ng ating boss na mag-part-time or to practice our profession outside. Pero ito rin po dapat ay outside your office hours. So example po is yung mga teachers or mga professors na allowed in some school to practice their profession basta ito po ay hindi nagkakaroon ng conflict sa kanilang original na schedule. And number 3 is recommend any person to any position in a private enterprise which has a regular or pending official transaction with their office. So, these prohibitions shall continue to apply for a period of 1 year after resignation, retirement, or separation from the public office. So, letter C, disclosure and or misuse of confidential information. So, public officials and employees shall not use or divulge confidential or classified information officially known to them by reasons of their office and not made available to the public either to further their private interest or give undue advantage to anyone or to prejudice the public interest. So, there are certain information classified as confidential and should not be made public. So, they must seek advice and take into account some aspects of those data as an official employee. So, example natin is ang mga doctors na meron silang tinatawag na doctor-patient confidentiality. So, they are not allowed to disclose or access information of their patients unless their patients allow them to do or in some cases, kailangan ng mga information na ito for legal purposes. Disclosure or misuse of confidential informations can also lead to disciplinary actions, losing your job, and worst case is criminal charges. So, letter D, the solicitation or acceptance of gifts. Public officials and employees shall not solicit or accept directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, loan, or anything of monetary value from any person in the course of their official duties or in connection with any operation being regulated by or transaction which may be affected by the functions of their office. So they shall not solicit or accept gifts directly or indirectly. So, sinasabi pa rin nila na hindi naman po talaga maiiwasan yan. Lalo na kapag ang binibigay nila is bukal daw sa kalooban or na-appreciate nila ang trabaho mo or in a form of respect. Basta wala po itong hinihinging kapalit. Lalo na po pagdating sa pera. So, if you are familiar with bribery, which is very common, so ito po ay hindi nararapat dahil violation po ito ng Code of Ethics and paglabag na rin po ito sa batas ng RA 3019 or tinatawag nating Anti-Graft and Corruption Practices Act. As to gifts or grants from foreign governments naman po, the Congress consents to accept and retention by public official or employee of a gift of nominal value tendered and received as a souvenir or a mark of courtesy or in a nature of scholarship or fellowship grant or medical treatment or acceptance na rin po ng public official or employee for travel grants or expenses sa travel taking place entirely outside po sa Pilipinas. So, the Ombudsman shall prescribe such regulations as may be necessary to carry out the purpose of this subsection, including pertinent reporting and disclosure requirements. Nothing in this act shall be construed to restrict or prohibit any educational, scientific, or cultural exchange program subject to national security requirements.
So, Section 8, Statements and Disclosure. Public officials and employees have an obligation to accomplish and submit declarations under oath of, and the public has the right to know their assets, liabilities, net worths, and financial and business interests, including those of their spouses and of unmarried children under 18 years of age living in their households. So dito, sa section na to, i-explain kung paano mag-file ng document for declarations and transparency ang mga public officials and employees. Bago tayo mag-dive in sa kung paano ang filing ng documents, sino-sino nga ba ang mga public officials and employees na tinutukoy dito? So, sila yung mga nakaupo sa gobyerno, mga lawyers, police, military officers, whether or not nakaka-receive sila ng compensation regardless sa amount na makukuha or binibigay sa kanila. Under na Section 8, meron tayong letter A, Statements of Assets and Liabilities and Financial Disclosure. The two documents shall contain information on the following. Letter A, real property, its improvements, acquisition costs, assessed value, and current fair market value. Letter B, personal property and acquisition costs. Letter C, all other assets such as investments, cash on hands or in banks, stocks, bonds, and the like. Letter D, liabilities. And letter E, all business interests and financial connections. Yung mga documents daw ay dapat may information about sa mga properties ng nag-file. Real property man siya or yung personal properties. Dapat stated rin yung improvements ng properties and yung current market value niya. Dapat nakita rin sa file yung assets tulad ng investments nung nag-file, cash on hand nila or yung nasa banks nila, liabilities, and lahat ng business and financial connections nila for transparency. Ang example ko dito is yung sa SALN na pinapakita ng government officials para makita ng mamamayan na hindi nila binubulsa or kinukurakot yung pera ng bayan. So, kailan nga ba dapat nakafile yung documents? So, letter A, dapat within 30 days ng assumption mo sa office. Letter B, on or before April 30. Tapos, every year na yon. And letter C, within 30 days na nag-separate ka na dun sa service. Dito naman, lahat ng public officials and employees ay required na ipakita ang mga documents na hinihingi nila within 30 days kung kailan ka natanggap or umupo sa pwesto. With the help of the Ombudsman, nakakuha mo yung file na needed mo like yung assets, liabilities, and net worth, and yung ibang business interests and financial connections mo sa mga nakaraang taon, including na rin yung taon kung kailan ka pumasok sa kahit saang opisina na under ng government. Pati na rin yung mag-asawa na parehong public officials or empleyado ay dapat nag-file ng statements nila and pwede rin yun na magkasama or magkahiwalay yung information nila. The statements of assets, liabilities, and net worths and disclosure of business interests and financial connections shall be filed by number 1, constitutional and national elective officials with the National Office of the Ombudsman. Number 2, senators and congressmen with secretaries of the Senate and the House of Representatives, respectively the justices with the clerk of court of the Supreme Court, judges with the court administrator, and all national executive officials with the office of the President. Number 3, regional and local officials and employees with the Deputy Ombudsman in their respective regions. Number 4, officers of the armed forces from the rank of colonel or naval captain with the office of the President, and those below said ranks with the Deputy Ombudsman in their respective regions. And number 5, all other public officials and employees defined in Republic Act number 3019 as amended with the Civil Service Commission. So ano nga ba yung Republic Act number 3019? RA number 3019 is anti-graft and corrupt practices. So meaning, pag kinuha mo tong file na ito, is mostly for your transparency na ikaw ay hindi ka corrupt at hindi mo binubulsa ang pera ng bayan. Dito naman sa letter B, sinasabi na lahat ng public officials or employee ay dapat i-identify o alamin yung mga informations nila and kung meron ba silang relatives na under din ng gobyerno. Sabi nga sa Civil Service Commission, ang duty ng mga public officials and employees ay accountable sa lahat ng tao at dapat magawa nila ang duties nila responsibly, may integrity, competence, loyalty, act of patriotism, justice, and palagi dapat nauuna ang public interest bago muna ang kanilang mga personal na interest. Dito naman sa letter C, yung accessibility ng documents ang pag-uusapan. So sa number 1, kapag filed na yung statements under sa act na to, dapat palaging available sa inspection pero dapat sa time kung kailan rin available yung may hawak ng document. Number 2, yung document ay pwedeng maging available for copying or reproduction after no time allotted, which is 10 working days from dun sa time kung kailan siya in-require ng law. Number 3 naman, lahat ng nagre-request ng copy ng statement ay kailangan magbayad para makover yung pag-reproduct ng statement, pag-mail, at yung cost ng certification. Lastly, which is number 4, lahat ng statements na naka-file under sa act na to ay magiging available for public ng 10 years. Pero kapag natapos na yung period, ito-terminate na yung document unless kailangan siya for investigation. Dito naman tayo sa letter D, which is yung prohibited acts. Una, dapat yung document ay hindi sumasalungat sa moral ng tao or ng public policies. Pangalawa, yung document ay hindi dapat ginagamit pang komersyal kasi ang ganitong file ay pinakikita lamang para sa balita at para mag-inform at hindi para sa komersyal. Section 9. Divestment. A public official or employee shall avoid conflicts of interest at all times. When a conflict of interest arises, he shall resign from his position in any private business enterprise within 30 days from his assumption of office and or divest himself of his shareholdings or interest within 60 days from such assumption. The same rule shall apply where the public official or employee is a partner in a partnership. The requirement of divestment shall not apply to those who serve the government in an honorary capacity, nor to laborers and casual or temporary workers. So, i-explain ko lang kung ano ba yung point ni Section 9. So, according kay Section 9, dapat ang mga public officials or employees ay malinis at dapat iwasan ang mga problema dahil kapag nagkaroon sila ng conflict, kinakailangan nilang bumaba sa pwesto nila or mag-resign within the allotted time, which is 30 days. Kung meron naman silang investments and shareholdings, kinakailangan nilang mag-back out within 60 days. At kapag siya ay isang partner sa partnership, kapag nakusahan o nakitaan ulit siya ng conflict, ay kailangan niyang mag-back out doon sa partnership.
Now, I'm going to discuss the Section 10 of the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Dito sa Section 10, it pertains to the review and compliance procedure. And nahahati siya sa tatlong part. Now, I'm going to discuss the first part, stated that the designated committees of both houses of the Congress shall establish procedures for the review of its statements to determine whether said statements which have been submitted on time are complete and are in proper form. Dito, tumutukoy naman ito sa mga itinalagang committees of both houses of the Congress na kailangan nilang mag-establish ng method sa pag-review ng mga pinasang statement or report na dapat ito ay makatotohanan, on time, and are complete. In the event of a determination is made that a statement is not so filed, the appropriate committee shall so inform the reporting individual and direct him to the necessary corrective action. Malinaw naman, di ba? And nandun naman sa mga previous section na natalakay kung ano ang mga statement, reports, or declaration ang tinutukoy dito. Especially sa section 8 na diniscuss. Connected with this, according nga sa Memorandum Circular released on April 16, 2018, the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines requires public officers and employees to submit upon assumption of office and during such period as may be required by law, a declaration under oath of their assets, liabilities, and net worth, o yung tinatawag nilang SALN. The same shall be accomplished under oath as the public has the right to know their assets, liabilities, net worth, and financial and business interests, including their spouses and unmarried children below 18 years of age living in their household. As it is endowed with public interest, there is need to establish a review and compliance procedure in the filing and submission thereof, thus this memorandum circular. Now let's discuss the second part of this section. So dito sa part na to, para mabigyan ng pagkakahulugan or prove this act, sinasabi lang dito na itong mga designated committees of both houses ay dapat meron silang power within their jurisdiction to give opinion in a form in writing sa mga taong covered by this act na napapailalim in each instance sa pag-approve and nakadepende yun yung approval by the affirmative vote of the majority of the particular house concerned. And to those individual and whom an opinion is rendered, and any other individual na involved sa parehong factual situation na ito, and who after issuance of the opinion acts in good faith in accordance, ay hindi dapat sumailalim sa anumang parusang provided in this act. And yung last part naman na tinutukoy dito sa section na ito, or dito sa section 10, stated that the heads of other offices shall perform the duties stated dun sa tinalakay nating first two subsection nitong act na to, yung A and B, hereof, insofar as their respective offices are concerned, subject to the approval of the Secretary of Justice in the case of the Executive Department and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the case of the Judicial Department. Now, we're done discussing section 10 and let's proceed to the next section that's all about penalties, the section 11. Ngayon, pag-usapan naman natin yung mga kaupo ng penalties if there is a violation of certain provisions sa ating RA 6713. Now, any public official or employee, regardless of whether or not he holds office or employment in a casual, temporary, holdover, permanent or regular capacity. Holdover. So, ano yung holdover na sinasabi dito? Let me give you an example. Like, nagkaroon or may failure yung naganap na election in a certain government or sa inyong barangay. So, hindi na siya naging successful kaya walang na-elect na official sa barangay nyo. So, technically, yung incumbent barangay captain will still hold the position since in hold offer capacity since nag-expired na yung kanyang term. So, going back, committing any violation of this act shall be punished with a fine not exceeding the equivalent of 6 months' salary or suspension not exceeding 1 year or removal depending on the gravity of the offense after due notice and the hearing by the appropriate body or agency. So if the violation is punishable by a heavier penalty under another law, he shall be prosecuted under the latter statute. And violations of Section 7, 8, or 9 of this Act shall be punishable with imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding 5,000 pesos or both, and in the discretion of the court of competent jurisdiction, disqualification to hold public office. Letter B. Any violation hereof proven in a proper administrative proceeding shall be sufficient cause for removal or dismissal of a public official or employee, even if no criminal prosecution is instituted against him. And letter C. Private individuals who participate in conspiracy as co-principals, accomplices, or accessories with public officials or employees in violation of this act shall be subject to the same penal liabilities as the public officials or employees and shall be tried jointly with them. Private. Though masasabi natin na this is only for public officials, but how about those private individuals na nag-participate sa conspiracy as co-principals? So technically, they are also subject to the same penalty or penal liabilities as the public officials or employees and shall be tried jointly with them. As we can see, wala talagang kawala kahit private individual pa yan. And letter D, the official or employee concerned may bring an action against any person who obtains or uses a report for any purpose prohibited by Section 8 of this Act. The court in which such action is brought may assess against such person a penalty and any amount not to exceed 25,000 pesos. If another sanction hereunder or under any other law is heavier, the latter shall apply. And that concludes yung mga penalties na pwedeng kaharapin ng isang individual once na may binayolate siyang provision sa ating RA 671.
Let's proceed to Section 12 of RA 6713, Promulgation of Rules and Regulations, Administration and Enforcement of this Act. It states that the Civil Service Commission shall have the primary responsibility for the administration and enforcement of this Act. It shall transmit all cases for prosecution arising from violation of this Act to the proper authorities for appropriate actions, provided, however, that it may institute such administration actions and disciplinary measures as may be warranted in accordance with law. Nothing in this provision shall be construed as a deprivation of the rights of each House of Congress to discipline its members for disorderly behavior. The Civil Service Commission is hereby authorized to promulgate rules and regulations necessary to carry out the provisions of this Act, including guidelines for individuals who render free voluntary services to the government. The Ombudsman shall likewise take steps to protect citizens who denounce acts or omissions of public officials and employees which are in violations of this Act. So sinasabi sa section na to na ang Civil Service Commission ang may responsibilidad at nangangasiwa sa pagpapatupad ng batas na ito o ang RA 6713. With that, the Civil Service Commission is tasked to oversee the government actions and processes. And if, for example, someone violates this act, the CSC or the Civil Service Commission will undertake that he or she will face disciplinary action in accordance to the law. However, the House of Congress and the Ombudsman still have the rights to discipline its officials nor its citizens for any violations for this act. Next, Section 13, the provisions for more stringent standards. It states that nothing in this act shall be construed to derogate from any law or any regulation prescribed by any body or agency, which provides for more stringent standards for its official and employees. So under Section 13 of RA 6713 tells us that since this is a law, it is a must to obey it. The law must strictly followed. Lahat ng government officials and employees should know and understand the Republic Act 6713 in order for us to be guided and to have a high standard ethics in doing public service. May kasabihan nga tayo na the ignorance of the law excuses no one.
Section 14. Appropriations. The sum necessary for the effective implementation of this act shall be taken from the appropriations of Civil Service Commission. Thereafter, such sum as may be needed for its continued implementation shall be included in the Annual General Appropriation Act. So, meron po tayo naging General Appropriation Act nitong last year po. Nasa Section 93 of Republic Act 11639. To enhance transparency and enforce accountability, all agencies of the government shall maintain a transparency seal to be posted on their websites. Section 15. Separable clause. If any provision of this act or the application of such provision to any person or circumstance is declared invalid, the remainder of the act or the application of such provision to other persons or circumstances shall not be affected by such declaration. In short, it means a clause which states that provisions are severable.
As for Republic Act 6713, Section 16, Repealing Clause, all laws, decrees, and orders or parts thereof inconsistent herewith are deemed repeated or modified accordingly, unless the same provide for a heavier penalty. Being inconsistent throughout has been formally terminated or can be converted to a more severe punishment. For example, if I didn't do my work well as an employee at a firm, they had the option of firing me or punishing me severely rather than letting me resign. Section 17. Effectivity. This act shall take effect after 30 days following the completion of its publication in the Official Gazette or in 2 national newspapers of general circulation. For example, I have additional steps to perform before I achieve my objective, and it will take days or more to complete.